speaking to a group in Faulkner County tomorrow night about critical race theory and how the left is actually, what they realize is that they're losing the battle, okay? And so what happens when the left loses the battle? Well, they change their terminology, okay? I mean, just think back to when the buzzword was global warming. Everything was about global warming, okay? And they realized that people were not being persuaded by that because, yeah, it's warm, but sometimes it's cold, you know, and the trends were not showing. So what did they do? They changed it to climate change, okay? This is what the left does when they realize they're losing a battle. They're not going to talk about, in many cases, critical race theory. They're going to inject their other words, whether it's equity or whether it's privilege or whether it's oppressors and those who are disenfranchised or those who are victims. But the bottom line is that that teaching elevates looking at students as classes rather than seeing them as individuals who are capable of success no matter what their background is, no matter what their zip code is, and no matter what the generational changes that may have occurred. And I think that we've come a long way. We certainly have not achieved everything that we hope we would in terms of that belief in our founding father, what our founding fathers said, that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator. We're forming a more perfect union, and I've said when I testified, you know, I never really gave a lot of thought to what does that mean, forming a more perfect union. Surely Thomas Jefferson and John Adams and the others had enough ego that they really thought that what they were putting together was pretty doggone perfect. So why would they refer to it as a more perfect union? Because they recognize that it is going to take generational change, that it's going to take the kind of change that happened with Abraham Lincoln freeing the slaves with the Emancipation Proclamation, and he himself actually sacrificing his life because he did free the slaves. That Reconstruction that took place in the South was an attempt to try and form that more perfect union, to make sure that everyone had an equal chance in this society. The Civil Rights Act of 1964, the same thing. That's why one of the things that I have done on this critical race theory issue is that I have requested that the Attorney General give an opinion that critical race theory violates the Equal Protection Clause and the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And hopefully, I've asked for an expedited opinion that will be generated before the school term, and that then a cautionary memo could be distributed by our Department of Education to school districts warning them that if they are allowing this kind of teaching, they could be violating the Constitution, not just of the state of Arkansas, but of the United States. I'm going to continue that fight because I think that's why people ultimately are going to vote for me to be their Secretary of State, because they know that I'm not going to be just sitting up there in office, not going to be spending tens of thousands of dollars to have nice plush chairs, as our current Secretary of State did in the first 4 months. $1,400 chair. You know, I'd like to see that chair, but I don't think the state of Arkansas should be paying for it. What our Secretary of State should be doing is being out in the state, being out talking to groups, being out testifying in committees in favor of anything that strengthens our electoral process. You know, one of the people that I wanted to thank, and he's not here, he's out of town, but someone who was very critical in the voter ID issue was A.J. Kelly, who worked in the Secretary of State's office and did a masterful job before the Arkansas Supreme Court in 2017 in defending that law. But unfortunately, A.J. was dismissed by our current Secretary of State. I think that shows an error in judgment. That is not the only error of judgment that has been made in terms of personnel changes or in the way that that office is conducted. And I intend to continue to talk about these things as I travel around the state, talking about comparisons, not necessarily attacking, because as I've said, Mr. Thurston, he's a very nice man, okay? But I just think that there have been some elements of his administration that really have not risen to the level of what the people of Arkansas expect and what the people of Arkansas deserve. And I'll appreciate your support as I venture through this process. And thank you so much for coming out today to hear this announcement. Don't necessarily want to turn this into a press inquiry, but if there are any questions from the press, you can either talk to me afterwards, or if you want to ask me the question in front of the group, I'll be glad to do that. Anybody?